Well, good morning and welcome to this week's edition of Coffee with a Coach. Last week I read an article on CNN and it was in honor of Father's Day. And what the article was showing is reactions from people when asked, what was the best advice that your father ever gave you? I went ahead and reposted that thing on my Facebook page, and then what I did is I thought about it myself and I thought, what were the 3 pieces of advice I most remember from my father? So I want to share those with you, and then I'll tell you what we're going to do with that information. First piece of advice. I was just a little kid, probably about 6 years old, and it was helping my dad pick up rocks in our backyard. My dad told me he'd give me a penny a piece, which I thought was a pretty good deal at the time. But when he wasn't looking, what I did is I took rocks out of his bucket and put them into my bucket. And he told me I was fired. He then told me that there's nothing worse in life than getting fired from a job. Later in life, I remembered that, and the one time I actually was fired from a job, a couple years ago, doing some coaching work at University of Maryland, I had invited my coachees to a workshop that was hosted by a church and got in some trouble for that. But I still remember feeling really bad about that, even though it was something that, in the long run, I thought was kind of silly. Second piece of advice was maybe a year or so later. I was helping my father clear the gutter out in the front yard. And the things were all full of old leaves and grass, and they were all wet and muddy, and there was ants crawling all over it. And he was telling me to pick it up with my bare hands. And I told him, I said, I don't want to do it. He says, there's going to be times you're going to have to do jobs you don't want to do. You just got to do it. Years later, times when I was in the Navy, certain tasks I just didn't want to do and I dreaded, I could still hear his words. There's sometimes some things you're going to have to do, even if you don't want to do it, and you just got to go there and do it. Third piece of advice was the summer before my senior year. My big plan for the summer, as I told my dad, was I was going to go down to the beach and hang out with my girlfriend all day, every day. And he says, no, that's not going to happen. This is a summer you need to go and work. And I got upset. He said, listen, summer is a great opportunity to make money. Don't ever turn down an opportunity to make money. And that lesson served me really well as I start a business now. So great advice. Now here's the thing with the advice. I'm not quite sure my dad remembers those times that he gave me that advice. And I'm not sure why it stuck in my head at the time. But later on I remembered that stuff and it was really helpful. So the first thing I want you to think about when it comes to this advice is, was there some advice you got in the past that you're using right now? If it is, think back on who gave you that advice. And if possible, you might want to go back and thank them. Second thing now to think about is that every day all of us are giving advice. The fact that you listen to my Coffee with a Coach videos and hopefully you listen to those are pieces of advice. Maybe you take them, maybe you don't take them, but it's advice. There's some things I do with my own kids and I know they're not listening, but maybe they actually are. What I want you to do is realize that all of us are giving advice. Whether it's good or it's bad, someone's probably going to take it for action at some point. Is it the good advice that we want them to take, or are we doing some things that they're going to emulate and it's going to be the wrong stuff? So this week, be thinking about that. What kind of advice are we leaving? It's like planting seeds in a way. If you think about it, you put them in the ground, you hope they take root, you hope they grow up into be something really big and productive. Our advice is the same thing. So this week, think about the advice that you're offering. Think about the advice that you've taken. Thank those that gave you the advice. Make sure the advice we're giving is good stuff. And hopefully I'm doing that for you. Well, that's it for this week, folks. Join me next week for our next edition of Coffee with a Coach. Have a great week.